Month. Tonight we are especially celebrating our women in glass, Olivia Padula, our Curator of Collections, and Yukimi Matsumoto, artist extraordinaire here in Sandwich. Thanks very much also to all our volunteers, our staff, our wonderful trustees, and our precious members and supporters. Thank you so much. Please also keep track of what other events are happening on our website. And the next event is a glass fusing class on Friday, March 14th with glass artist Kim Savoy. There'll be two classes, one at 10 a.m. and one at 1 p.m. And that's the first of a whole series of wonderful things happening this summer. To get the evening started, I'm going to introduce Olivia Padula, who is going to engage with a wonderful talk about women in the Boston Sandwich Glass Factory. And following that, we will hear from Yukimi Matsumoto, and then we'll go out to the hot glass studio where Yukimi will give a demonstration assisted by our glass blower, Peter Wechter. So, Olivia, and thank you again.
Some of the women who worked in the factory, the different jobs that they might have had, and I actually have a special feature tonight, which I'll get into. All right, so by the early 19th century, it was not uncommon for women to be working in factories. A lot of them worked in textile mills, as this lovely illustration shows. In Massachusetts, Francis Cabot Lowell established textile mills where the majority of his employees were actually women. By the 1830s, 85% of his employees were women. Pretty progressive. The average wage for women in New England working in these textile mills was $3.25 for a 73-hour work week. And we think we've got it back now. And I love to put things into the inflation calculator, so that's a little over $100 in today's money for 73 hours of work. All right. So, as early as 1832, there were women reported to be working at the Boston Sandwich Glass Company, which opened in 1825. In the documents relative to the manufacturers of the United States, collected and transmitted to the House of Representatives by the Secretary of the Treasury in Washington, 1833, Volume 1. This is a lengthy report. Demick Jarvis submitted his report in March of 1832, in which he noted he had 5 women working painting glass. And so that's what you see here is some of the earliest pieces of pressed glass. These 2 lamps over here have a roughed surface in which enamel paint was added by the women workers, and then it was sent to the decorating department and fused. And then this is just a pressed loop bowl. So, some of the earliest evidence. There were also women working in cementing metal collars to the lamps that they produced. So here we go. So these metal collars here to which the burner would be attached, women were allowed to do that. And Anne Talbot, age 22, in the 1870 census was reported to be working at the factory. And her son, Frank Chipman, later wrote a book on the romance of sandwich glass, in which he noted his mother was capping lamps. I forgot to mention that the 5 women who were working in 1832, they were reported to be making $1.20 a day for their work, and women working in the textile industry in Sandwich, so just a factory away, were making less than 50 cents per day. So good for us, right? Progressive company. So some of the other areas in which women worked were in the packing room. So this isn't the best picture, but it shows how they would have shipped their glasswares. So this is a wooden crate filled with tiny little bottles, and they're stuffed with marsh grass. So it can be shipped up to Boston to be sold. So the women were employed there, as well as inspecting glass. They were thought to have more keen eyes, and so any faults they would find and get rid of, and they were thought to be also more gentle in packing the glassware. They were also employed in the molds room. So this is just an image of a mold, and they were tasked with oiling and keeping the molds clean. They were pretty expensive to have molds made at that time, so they were very precious commodities and had to be taken care of. Actually, one of the women reported to be working in the mold room was Melissa Thurston. She was aged 14 in 1865, and she only worked at the factory for a few years before she left to care for the sick wife of John C. Ellis. He was a blacksmith in town. After John's wife passed away, she married John and became Melissa Thurston Ellis, and her interest actually in sandwich glass never waned, and she became the first curator of the Sandwich Historical Society and was very involved in the first centennial exhibition of sandwich glass in 1925. So as you know, we're celebrating our 200th anniversary. In 1865, a writer from the Namasket Gazette visited the factory and mentioned some women workers. He reported that of the 75 workers in the cutting room, 18 were girls. The 1860 census lists Mary Swansea, aged 22, as a glass cutter, and she wouldn't have been a glass cutter in the sense that you're thinking of all those wonderful big bowls that they cut. Likely she was tasked with rough grinding stoppers. So this is how they pressed a bunch of stoppers at once. It was all in one piece, and then each stopper was cracked off, and it would have to be roughed so that it would fit into a bottle. And there would be young girls who would match stoppers and bottles so that they all fit. It was a nice set. And they were also tasked with finishing toys. So similar to how these stoppers were pressed, they could make these tiny little toys. And there's a quarter here for scale, so these are minuscule. And they would just finish those and get them ready. Other jobs in the cutting department included burnishing glass to bring it to this high polish that you see here. So this picture shows different steps in glass cutting. So these first 3 or so would have been done by the men, and then the women would have finished. They could use leather or reeds, marsh grass to bring that glass to the high shine that we know today. In the 1860 census, there was Anne Frances McLaughlin, and she was listed as a burnisher, and she was the daughter of John McLaughlin, who also worked in the glass factory. So a lot of the women who ended up being employed at the factory had relatives who had already worked in the factory. It was they had a habit of hiring within the family, and then usually they'd get married to a different glass blower and stop working. All right, and then there was also some women who worked in the decorating department. And so you can see here, this is glass etching. You can see these lovely ladies up here preparing the glass to be etched. They would apply a wax resist to the glass, to the areas that they didn't want to be etched, and then they would dip the glass into a hydrofluoric acid solution, and that would bite away at the glass to leave a lovely design. So they would help use these glass plates, oops, wrong button, there we go. They would help use these glass plates to transfer the design. It was a easier way of etching or engraving glass. And it was used mostly for mass-produced goods like these globes here. And it's this little sad story. So it is said that the women who worked in the etching department would hide their hands because they were ashamed of how the acid ate away at their nails. So in the 1880 census, there was 3 women employed in the glass etching department. There was Mary Cole, aged 15, Isabel McNamee, aged 17, and Hannah E. Swift, aged 54. Yeah, she was related to the Laphams and was a big family of glass blowers, and currently it is not known why she chose to work, but she did. She was the oldest recorded woman who worked at the factory. Sorry, I keep knocking it. There we go. So not much is known, obviously, about the women who worked in the factory, but the most that we do know is the women who worked in the decorating department doing painting in the glass. So in the 1880 census that I just mentioned, there was 22 women working in the factory, 12 worked in glass works, 3 worked in glass etching, and 7 worked as decorators. And if you go around the museum, we do have a little display about painted glassware, but most of what we have there is written about the Gregory sisters, Mary and Emma Gregory. And the reason we know the most about them is because they kept daily journals, and we have those in our possession, so it's easy to read about them. But today, I am delighted to highlight the story of another woman who worked in the glass factory in the decorating department. Her name was Annie Matilda Nye Freeman, and we're actually very lucky to have her grandson here today with us, Irving Freeman, in the crowd. Give him a wave, there he is. And through his help and the help of Scott Fleck, our trustee who's in charge of the Historical Society, we have some more information on her life and what she did. And I am thrilled to be able to share that with you. And so in this picture, number 15, if you can see, is Annie. She's right here next to, that's Edward Swan. He was the head of the decorating department from 1872 until the factory's closing in 1888. And you can see that she's quite a tall woman, 5'7", I believe her grandson said. There we go. All right. And this is a picture of her as a lovely young lady and some examples of the work that she did. So Annie Matilda Nye, daughter of Herman Nye Jr. and Tabitha Fuller Nye, she was born on May 12, in 1860 in Sandwich, and she lived in Spring Hill Village, about a mile from the factory. Makes it convenient to go to work. In the 1880 census, that was taken in June, she was listed as a milliner, which was a person who worked on decorating hats and other women's accessories. So she did that in June, but 1 month later, she was working at the factory, and she worked in the decorating department, and she was 20 years old. She was a friend of Emma Gregory, who I mentioned earlier, and Emma noted in her diary that Annie came to work, and she was doing very nicely. So she painted winter scenes on lamps, as well as lamp pedestals that you can see here. This column part is a pedestal, as well as ring vases and lamp shades. Here's another picture of her and some more examples of the work that she did. This is actually a planter's pot. So Annie married John M. Freeman Jr. on June 11th in 1885 in Sandwich, and she was 25 years old. The occupation listed on her marriage license is glass decorator, so we know that she was working at the factory for 5 years. John Freeman was working as a traveling salesman. So previously, and if you actually go look in the woman's case and read the sign, it says that Annie Nye continued working at the factory until its closure in 1888, but we now know, very recently, that is not true. She actually left working at the factory shortly after she married John Freeman, and they moved to Wellfleet, Massachusetts. And we know that because their first child, Everett Nye Freeman, was born in 1886 in Wellfleet, Mass. So they remained in Wellfleet for a number of years, until moving to Wareham, where their fourth child was born in 1896. And this is a lovely image of Annie all grown up with her granddaughter Priscilla Freeman. So the couple remained in Wareham until at least 1910. They lived on Sawyer Street in the town. And let's see. In the summer of 1913, John Freeman had to leave his job because of health reasons, and so they decided to come back to Sandwich, and for a little while they lived in Annie's old house. And in 1920, Mr. Freeman was tragically killed in a car accident, but the 1930 census reports that Annie was still living in Sandwich. She was the head of her household, and she lived with her daughter Dorothy Freeman, aged 38, and her son John Murray Freeman III, aged 26. And these are some more examples of her work that have descended in the family of Irving, in her family. Let's see. There we go. And these are some images that Irving had shared with us of a lamp that she decorated, and I think it's just one of the most incredible lamps shades that I've seen. Just the amount of detail here and the story that it shows is incredible. So in 1940, in the census, Annie was still living in Sandwich with her son Ralph and his family, and she passed away on August 1st in 1943, and she is buried in the Spring Hill Cemetery in the family park. So I was fortunate enough earlier this week to be able to talk with her grandson Irving, and he was telling me a little bit about her. And he said that she never talked about the glass that she decorated. She never painted again, and his mother actually had to pull the story out of her. But, you know, I'm thrilled today to be able to share her story with you and bring some light to the incredible work that she did. And I just hope that she was proud of it. And, oh, almost forgot, the pièce de résistance. This actually is a wonderful painting that we have on display right now that has been loaned by Mr. Freeman. It's in that case over there. So the story for this is one day while they were working, Annie goes in to talk to Mr. Swan and ask him a question, and she sees him painting these morning glories. And she asks him, well, what are you going to do with that when you're done? And he says, it's probably just going to go in the wastebasket. Right? This beautiful painting is just going to go in the wastebasket. And so she says, well, if you're going to do that, then please give it to me instead. And so when he finished the painting, he did give it to her, and she has cherished it for all these years and has been passed down in their family. And we're fortunate enough to have Mr. Freeman loaning it to us to the month of March for our little women's display over here. So this vertical strip here is the painting was painted on the back of a sheet with lamp designs. So it was just a little sketch that he was doing, and he was going to throw it away for whatever reason. But fortunately, he did not. And so that is all for me about the women. Were there any questions before I hand over the mic to our guest of honor? Yes, one in the back.
Olivia has a wonderful exhibit in the museum which displays some of the background of some of the decorated pieces, and some of the pieces that you showed in your slide presentation are in your exhibition. So everyone make sure that you go into the museum and see Olivia's special exhibition in our center gallery.
Yes, it is on view until the end of March. And if you want, I can go in there and give you a whole other spiel after we see Yukimi's lovely demonstration. Any other questions?
You kind of have to share what the women made. What did the men make, and was there a big gap?
You mean in terms of decorating?
No, pay. Weekly pay,
Oh,
monthly
weekly
pay?
pay. I don't know what the men's weekly pay was, what they made. I know at least for glass blowers, so they were the most skilled, they would make about $800 a week. But for men, in today's money, $800 in today's money, sorry. I saw David's face. So yes, the highest skilled people at the factory were the glass blowers, which were all men, and they could make up to $800 a week. But I don't know, like glass cutters, what they might have been making, but more than women. Any other questions? Oh, one in the back.
When you mentioned that she came back to Sandwich and she moved into the schoolhouse, which schoolhouse was that? Where was that? Where did you say exactly she?
Oh, she lived on Spring Hill.
Before that, when you said she first came back,
it's not a schoolhouse.
it wasn't. What was it? I think she said.
What did I say?
It was a family house.
Yeah, it was her family house.
And where was that?
Spring Hill.
It's on Route 6A, across from Spring Hill Cemetery. It's a nine house.
Oh, no. Oh, okay, all right.
Did I say schoolhouse? I apologize.
No.
Okay. Oh, last night I was giving a presentation and I called a fly trap a fishbowl. And I convinced a lot of people. Any other questions? All right, well then I am going to turn it over to Yukimi, who is my personal favorite glass artist. So I personally am thrilled for this. Yeah.
Thank you, Olivia.
Oh, thank you.
This light is nice. I am a little bit nervous about talking right now. I think demonstration, it's gonna be my natural habitat, so I'll be fine, I think. But, so I'm gonna read what I read. So I just gonna be looking down, but I'm gonna show, I will have a slideshow just going on in the back, so I hope you can enjoy it. So, hello. My name is Yukimi Matsumoto. I am a glass blower at McDermott Glass Studio. My husband and I run together in our backyard. I want to thank Sandwich Glass Museums for inviting me for this talk and demo. And thank you everyone here for coming today. Now, I will talk about a little bit of myself and my journey with glass. I born in Osaka, Japan. Osaka is known for food and comedy. Maybe that's why I love food and laughter. Just about all my family is from food industry. My father's side had teriyaki restaurants, and my mother's side had sushi restaurant. As I was growing up, I watched and listened how passionate they are with what they do. The long hours of their work and the relationship with people around the work. I am really happy to see how they worked. I respect them, and no matter how hard I had to work with in my studio, I feel like I never can come close to my parents. My siblings and I all helped our parents whenever we can do. That was maybe the reason all my cousins and both my siblings are still in the food industry, but me. I guess I was the type who have to run the opposite way when everybody is going the same way. Or I just enjoy eating food than making them. I went to school for production design after graduating from high school, and after that, I went to work at the glass studio in Nagano. In the school, I learned basic of many styles of glassmaking, like fusing stained glass or flame work. But I just fell in love with glass blowing. The material of glass is unique than any other media. It moves while you are making it. I loved the way glass have their own mind. I remember in the beginning of glass making, I was saying to myself, why? Why are you moving like that? But glass moves to physics. If glass was hot and moving and you angle it too much, it runs away from your hand. And if glass is too cold, they just get stubborn and don't move and break. So in order to make anything, you need to learn to understand their move and work with them, not force them. After a couple of years of working in a studio, I realized how much I didn't know. And the studio was started to pressure me to get my own style. Even though I think it is a great advice, and it was with a good intention, I didn't want to make my style just to make a style. I was a helplessly stubborn person. I am too now. I said I was. I had an image in my head. If you want to build a pyramid, you need a good base to start. And if you make a pyramid on top of what I had then, it would be a really small pyramid. I wanted to learn more about glass and make a biggest base to make a biggest pyramid. And if I'm not good enough then, I can happily say I have tried. I have struggled with the thought, and I came to the United States and took classes from Corning, New York. That's where I met David. He was already blowing glass for 27 years at the time, and was really good at it. Everybody in the class was wondering why he was there. And he said, there's so much more for him to learn than what he already knows. What he knows is like a grain of sand compared to beach full of sand for him to know. And I never forget what he said. I wanted to follow everywhere he goes. Long story short, we are married for more than 20 years now. I started to work at the place where David worked. It was quite a big place, and usually 3 workbench going on, with different pieces being made. I was the first woman to work in a studio then, and a small amount of uneasiness I felt when I started there. But I loved working there. All of them had great skill in working glass, and I looked at them with awe. Every day they made different things, and assisting them could become chaos. I was the lowest of the assistants then, but so many things could go wrong if any of us wasn't on top of things. We started to work well together as assistants, and I was running everywhere to help everybody with so much happiness. And one day, the owner of the studio handed me a check for a week with a letter saying that she never seen anybody work so hard in a studio before me. And not only that, she sees my hard working is making everybody else work better and harder, and thanked me and gave me a raise. It is maybe one of my proudest time in working with glass. And little after that, working in there, we decided to build a studio in our backyard. David showed me and taught me everything I know about glass now. I think understanding glass is most important thing to create anything in glass. As we work more and more, I start to get a hang of it. Making shape is one thing, but glass color is another topic. I always loved to paint, and when I do paint, I always use only primary colors and white. If you mix red, yellow, and blue in paint, you can make just about any colors. And that is one project my art teacher from high school gave us, and I just loved it. Naturally, when I started to make more glass pieces, I mixed colors like paintings. And many of them came out as those horrible brown. And I realized the glass colors are not made by pigments. They are made by chemicals. Yellow and blue doesn't always make green in glass. They come out brown, but not nice brown. It just wasn't pretty. But I loved mixture of colors, and I couldn't stop trying it. I made so many horrible brown things. So many. And after they come out from the kiln, I sit in the house and look at them forever. And after so many of them, I started to see what they are doing. It is very hard to explain by words, but many designs I do now is from a small spot of a horrible vase that I thought beautiful, and try to get control of it. I still have many of those spots I love, but I haven't understand why that happened. Why it happened, some of them yet. So, glass blowing is also a teamwork. That is another reason it is fun. We always had one or two persons with us in our studio most of our journey. All of us have to understand what is going on in order to make glass smoothly. Over the time we work together, the team becomes really amazing. We don't even have to say anything to know what the other person needs to do and help each other throughout the day. And trust we put on each other is something I never feel in any other situation. When I came from Japan, away from my family and friends, I got lonely many times. I never thought working with glass would give me a whole new family. Some of them left our studio to have their own studio. Some went to pursue a different profession. Some I still hang out together. Some I don't even hear from them anymore. But I have all of them in my heart as a gold and treasure everything they gave me. I'm not an artist who put a statement through my work or make you aware of the things in the world. I am from food people, and that is in my core. I just want to make beautiful things in my unique way, and glass blowing makes me so happy. If I can share the happiness with the people who has my piece, like when they see my glass work in their house, and if that makes them happy, that makes me even happier. That's it. Maybe some questions? Oh, Olivia!
How long have you been glass blowing?
Oh, 32 years. I started when I was 19. It makes me 52. That's what you wanted. So thank you so much.
Well, now you know why we love glass, past and present, and why it's such an important art form. So thank you for coming out to celebrate Women's History Month, but also we're celebrating the 200th anniversary of the Boston Sandwich Glass Factory this year, 2025. And this is our one of our first events in celebration, and we're so honored to kick it off with these wonderful people speaking about glass. So we're going to follow Yukimi out to the High Glass Studio and watch her do her magic. Thank you all.